for you today. Thank you, Mark. Report. We have a jam-packed agenda for you today, but a few housekeeping things. For the people who've not been here before, the restroom is back there. If for some reason we need to leave the office, there's this exit, there's the exit you came in, and we can also get out through the back if they've unlocked it. So those two would be your closest exit. So, you know, it might be behind you. So look where you are. A lot of thank yous. First of all, thank you to everybody who brought food today. I mean, it's always delicious. Yay to the food team. We're also starting the year off nice and clean. So thank you to Pete Brown, who isn't here, but he arranged to have the carpets and upholstery clean. So if you're sitting on the sofas and the upholstered stuff, you are, yeah. That's right. You are the first to sit upon the freshly cleaned upholstery. So thank you to Pete for doing that. A thank you to Michael Hertz because he arranged yesterday to have our modem moved from Fieldcraft next door here, and that's going to improve our phone and internet connection. So a shout out to Mike Hertz for doing that. A huge shout out to our tech team, Mark, Jim, and Mike, who did an amazing sound check yesterday, and to Tom, who's been giving us a whole lot of support and suggestions. Last month's meeting, I understand I sounded worse than I normally do. So hopefully the technical issues will change that and you can hear my normal icky voice. And again, a thank you to Marcy, Patty, and the others who helped reorganize the office so we have to improve traffic flow and storage. You might notice we moved some things around, and it's okay if you don't notice because that's part of the idea, just that we have some more room for some more chairs. But people were so helpful. Great ideas. There's still some things left to do, but this is a really great start. So I think we're in a really good position to do all the work we need to do this year. And I got to tell you, it's going to be a busy one, folks. So, you know, eat your carbs, get a lot of rest, take care of yourself, because we're going to be calling on you for a lot. And a huge, huge thank you to those who came out to our Ice Out event on Sunday. I said I would buy coffee for the 12 people I thought were going to be there. Then when it came to 15, it was like, oh, then 20, 25, 50. Came out to 100 people, stood with us. Yes, stood with us. And then there were people who wanted to be there but couldn't, like Anne provided a gorgeous sign that I held. We had, you know, I had emails from people who were in Arizona and California and Florida saying, can't be there, but we're with you in spirit. All that really, really helps. We even had a woman who was visiting her mother who lives in the area, and this woman was from Minneapolis, and she said, I was so glad that you guys were doing an event because I really feel that I needed to do something today when so many of my neighbors and friends are out there having a real tough time. So again, bravo to all of you, all of you. So the correct response to the political violence is more peaceful protest. You know, it's a way of standing up to bullies and showing up. And the people in Minneapolis are showing us the way. They're being creative and peaceful by while watching out for their neighbors and friends. So this is a way to counter the felon's threats to invoke the Insurrection Act. More peaceful protest. He backed down in Los Angeles, backed down in Chicago, getting a lot of resistance in Minneapolis. People who used to support him and are seeing what he's doing. And there's, you know, it's like moving the great big ship in the middle of the ocean. It's taking some time. But if protesters retreat, he's going to see his threat was effective and then do this in another city. So, you know, we're doing what we can in Benzie County, and it really comes down to all of you, and I am so grateful, so grateful. So you're also hearing about a lot of events. People are asking me, when's the next No Kings? When are we going to do this again? Here are some things that we know about. we're not necessarily, as the Benzie Dems, going to be doing these things, but we do want to make you aware of them. It's up to you what you want to participate in or not. We try to find events that have high visibility so people can see us, as well as be effective. I mean, the ice out thing was absolutely amazing that so many people came out on that miserable day to stand in snow and ice. I thought that was pretty effective. So some of the things we've heard about, and then we're going to be talking about with some of our tech team and communications team on how we let you know about these things, you know, whether by email or posting it on our calendar that's on our website, putting it in you know, the window, because you know, you should be aware of these things. So Women's March, they're calling for something, I think on January 20th, a general strike, a walkout. You know, what does a walkout mean in this area when most people are, you know, not working? and you know, but you know, there are things that you can do to participate on that day. The Minnesota unions are planning the same thing, a general strike and walkout on January 23rd. May Day, May 1st, general strike and protest. That's possibly something that we can do because that could be very visible. There is going to be a No Kings 3. There's no date set, but we're following that. We'll let you know as soon as that's going to happen. We did also learn that there are weekly protests down at the Baldwin concentration camp. Some of you went down when we had a small group that went down a couple months ago. They now are protesting weekly on Saturdays from noon until 3. So if you're interested in going down, maybe we can carpool. It's really better to go in a group for something like this. So let us know. You can always contact us via our email, benziedemocrats.com, at gmail.com. Let us know what you're interested in, or, you know, call and leave a message here at the office. But the most effective thing we can do right now is call senators, just, you know, call Slotkin and Peters and tell them to refuse to vote for any funding bill that increases ICE's budget and refuse to fund the Department of Homeland Security until ICE's abuses are stopped. The government funding deadline is January 30th. You should all have access to their phone numbers or their addresses. Manistee is doing a postcard event, and they're sending postcards. We have copies of their suggested text in our I think I put it in our new handy little information point, but it could be on the desk. So basic thing is, take care of yourself and others. You know, they may have Dr. Oz, but we have Dr. Hertz. And Dr. Hertz reminds us, but he does remind us that, you know, flu is spiking in Benzie County. You know, some of us are having sniffles, some of us aren't feeling good. And as soon as I say this, people are going to start coughing. But, you know, take care of yourself, you know. Oh, okay. Thank you, Michael. And, you know, never feel bad that you can't attend something because you're not feeling well. It's important that you take care of yourself. And then stay connected too, you know, either through the Benzie Dems or your religious community or even your Mahjong or euchre group. Just, you know, stay connected with some other people, because, you know, also too, sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to do something for somebody else. So a couple other things that are coming up before you get to hear another voice. On Tuesday, January 27th, from 11 to noon, at the Benzie Shore Libraries in Frankfurt, the League of Women Voters is doing a Beyond the Ballot. It's an overview of Michigan's election process. We'll discuss what happens before, during, and after Election Day. If you don't know, and I think that maybe 90% of the people in this room do know, but for those who might not know what our process is, it might be a good refresher course too. There's going to be a lot of misinformation about elections. We want to be able to counter that. This could be a way that you are armed with some good information. On Thursday, January 29th at 6 p.m. at the Mills, Dr. Paul Hoke, he's a Ford retiree and he's a blacksmith, and he's involved with a group called Cars for Ukraine. And he actually drove a car, at least one car, from London to Ukraine. This car had been this vehicle had been modified for either medical or military use. And so he has an hour-long presentation. He wanted to give it to the general membership. He was able to secure the Mills House because I think that, you know, a lot more people than can fit in this room would want to see that. So if you can do that, 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 29th. And then this is my last one. Friday, January 30th, starting at 5:30 here. It's our first movie and chili night. So, and we are showing Wag the Dog. And remind me, Tom, to give you that copy of the film so you can know, so you can see whether it's in English or not. Well, they say it's in English, and I've not seen it, but I've been told it's about a president who starts a war to detract from a domestic issue. So, if you, all right. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Jim so he can talk for a while.
Release asking time.
And that too, yeah. Let me clear out my mess here and move this over.
Wow, what a great crowd. Thank you for being here. This is just so awesome. Really, really is awesome. So we wanted to talk to you about couple different things. One is the banner ads in the Record Patriot. Who's seen those? Yeah, okay. They get over, definitely. We've been in for more than a year every week. We explained this at the last meeting. We have some more definitive plans about it now. We just found out back then that the rate we were paying is going way up. We had been paying way too little, actually. If you look at it honestly, we were getting a scandalously good deal, and that deal has ended as of this week. So the ads are now costing approximately 3 times as much as they did. We did not budget for that. So we're going to approach people by letter. We're going to do a quiet, not real public fundraising effort to pay for the rest of it. We need to raise about another $5,000 to put a number on it. When we put this call out a couple weeks last meeting back in November, $800 showed up like right away. So I think there's some real strong support for this. So I would say watch your mailbox. We'll be coming to many of you through the U.S. mail to ask you to make a small additional donation in addition to what you already donate to the party as your dues every year. We function pretty well on people's dues and the donors that we have. We're usually pretty good, and we want to have the war chest totally maxed out this time. So with this happening, if you can help us replenish for the Record Patriot ads, that'll be a big help so we can do some other things as well. We don't want to just put all of our eggs in one basket. So the other part about that is
well, the billboard.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the other thing I want to tell you, Kira would be better to talk about this because she's actually managing it. But have you seen the billboard down by Lake Ann down there, the new one?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We're going to have a billboard up every month between now and Election Day. Okay? Be continuous. They will move around and the messages will change somewhat, but we think the overarching message is basically they lied. It's kind of their trademark. And we just want to show people in all the different ways that they're lying. And the billboards will be doing that. We're able to do that because a couple amazingly generous people stepped up and said, how about if we do this for you guys? And we said, how about it? So look forward to that. There will be a billboard up somewhere in Benzie County all the time between now and November. Getting back to the banner ads, I wanted to bring up Nancy Kita, who has an event she wants to talk about that has a lot to do with the banner ads and some other community service as well. Nancy?
Thank you. First talk about the, we're having a little ski party. Some of you in the past have come to our Moonlight ski suit benefit parties over the years. We've supported a lot of different causes, and this year we're going to help with the banner ads. And we have I live in a place, some of you have been there, where there's a lot of hills and trails, and when we have moonlight, which doesn't happen that often, but we we can plan for it. We like to have a little ski and a soup dinner benefit to help with various causes. So we're going to do that 2 weeks from tomorrow, which is the full moon, February 1st. But you don't have to ski or snowshoe. That's just an additional thing. You come and talk and have some great food, and it's not a potluck. We're going to provide soup and salad and bread, and I'm promising great conversation, and who knows what else could evolve. But occasionally we do have moonlight. If we don't, we use headlamps and get out around on the trails. And my best offer is, if you don't have cross-country ski equipment, we have lots of it. So if you send me your shoe size ahead of time,
Ooh,
I can probably fix you up.
what a deal.
And I do have, we're gonna get out a virtual invitation, which looks something like this, to those of you who have come to previous benefits. But if you haven't and you want a little bit of information, I have some hard copy flyers. So
And thank you for that, Nancy. It's
Yeah.
very generous of you to do that. We really appreciate it.
it'll be at 4 p.m., starting at 4 p.m. and going on till the moon rises and later.
It's in 2 Saturdays, right, the day?
It's on a Sunday.
That's Sunday.
Tomorrow,
February 1st.
2 weeks from tomorrow. Yeah, I think that's 2 weeks from tomorrow.
February 1st?
Yes,
Yep.
February 1st. So much for that. I can go on to my other presentation. Okay, and I also have a great volunteer opportunity for you. If you can commit to 2 hours a month to help families in our community to improve their mental health. And why do I say this? Because I was probate judge for 18 years here in Benzie County. And during that time, I thought one of the biggest flaws in what we offered to our constituents is that we did not have a place in our county at the time for supervised parenting time for those people who are court ordered to only see their children under supervision. And this comes sometimes from they're facing mental health challenges. Sometimes they're recovering from substance abuse. There are other reasons too why the court orders that, but those are two of the main ones. So I pledged to myself that when I retired, I was really going to work on this. So we have a little group that's been in place, and we incorporated as a nonprofit, and we are in need of a few more volunteers to come and help us to supervise. And it's really kind of fun. It's only every other week. We have a chance to meet for a couple hours with families in a group setting, which is more natural for them than going to one of the agencies and being behind a one-way mirror, which used to drive me crazy when I heard people testifying to that, what they did wrong, what they did right, and it doesn't work. So we finally have a group right here in Benzie County. We also serve Manistee County, and so we'd be happy to give you more information at our little meet and greet that's coming up over in Benzonia at the barn, which some of you may know of, which is a smaller building across the parking lot from the First Congregational Church in Benzonia. So if anybody's interested, that's going to be from 5 to 6:30. We'll have sandwich fixings and coffee, whatever, a chance to talk and find out if you might want to be one of our mentors. So I have
was
a
the date on
brochure.
that again?
It's going to be February 10th.
Okay.
At 5 o'clock in Benzonia. And I have some of our brochures that gives you a lot of detail about it. And I also have some flyers that give you a little bit more also. So I thank you for the time. I said 90 seconds. I hope I did. I'm trying to practice.
You did very well, Nancy. Thank you.
And Nancy will be around. You can holler her after the meeting, just like you can grab the 2 candidates and talk to them as well. We hope you'll stay when the meeting is finally over, because I hope it's a little bit full.
Right. So we are going to hear from 2 candidates, but we also have a candidate who is on Zoom. So while I'm calling up one candidate to speak, Rachel, Jay, do you want to unmute yourself and just have a few minutes and say hi to people and tell them your news?
Yes, thank you so much. And forgive me for not being there. I live down in Muskegon County, everyone. My name is Jay Kilgo. I'm a city commissioner in the city of Muskegon and a candidate for Michigan's 32nd district. So I have met some of you all. I've been up there. The weather told me to stay home today and try the Zoom out and see how the Zoom goes for me. So just some things I've been around our district talking about. One is the Money Out of Politics ballot initiative. that we're really trying to get on the ballot. I really think that voices will be heard if we can get some of this corporate money out of politics. So that way our issues speak and not money that comes from billionaires. Um, I'm a tax the rich fan. Actually, when I was there, one of you all gave me that tax the rich sticker, and it's still right on the back of my vehicle because that's how I feel. I've been speaking about some of the legislation that I am looking to introduce when I get to Lansing. One is a problem to fix our pop-up tax problem and the uncapping of property taxes when people buy a new property. Um, just all around the state, pop-up taxes have been a huge issue. Um, the data center conversations. So for the state seats, whether it's the House seat or this 32nd District Senate seat, we need to be talking to candidates about how they feel about data centers, how they're going to fight back, what they're going to do, how they're going to hold these big companies' feet to the fire. Yes, it's not necessarily in our backyard yet, but we have a lot of backyard here in the 32nd District, and they're going to start looking our way to try and come and use our resources for free and take our land and use it how they want to, as opposed to us having a say in it. Um, Healthcare, I do like telling my story about I'm an ACA recipient. I'm a real estate agent as a day job, so an entrepreneur, and I was on ACA last year. I paid about $250 a month for my health insurance, and I got a letter back in October saying January 1st, your insurance is going to go up to $683 a month. That's just unaffordable. So I currently don't have insurance, and I'm looking for affordable insurance. So I'm also fighting for us to have affordable insurance options across the state, and we can do that. I am um, a big proponent of the My Care bill for universal health care here in the state of Michigan. That is something that can be done, but we're going to have to work at it together. Um, Being in real estate, I'm a big advocate for affordable housing. Also, there are ways that the state can come in and local municipalities can come in to create programs to make it easier for people to obtain home ownership and for people to have affordable mortgages and rent payments. Um, I have not taken a dime of corporate money. I have not even raised as much money as my primary opponent. I am completely grassroots. Please check out my platform, jaykilgo.com, so you can find it right under that name, jaykilgo.com. Take a moment to check out my website. There's a link. If anyone could donate $5, $10, this is how I'm going to help get the word out throughout Benzie County, Manistee County, Mason County, Oceana County, and Muskegon County. So yes, I'm at the very opposite end of our district from you all, but I like it up there, and I will definitely be coming back. I'll definitely be coming back to see you all again soon, and meet and just have conversations. I think that politicians who run from their constituents and don't answer the phone and don't answer questions, like my assistant called Senator Bumstead last week, and they basically told her to kick rocks and call um, her congressional senator, and they didn't want to help her. I won't be like that. I don't think any of our politicians in Lansing should be like that. They were elected to do a job, and part of that job is listening to constituents and listening to issues. I do that on the local level now, on city commission in the city of Muskegon, and I definitely will fight for all my constituents in Lansing. So I look forward to seeing you all soon. Stay safe out there on the roads, and thank you for just a moment to speak, Jana.
Thank you. Well, it's good to see you, Jay. And we look forward to seeing you again. And Christy, can you just put Jay's contact information in the chat so people can get that? if you have a chance. Thanks. So, and also we're getting some nice reviews from the people on Zoom that the sound quality is much better. So again, yay to the tech team. Bravo. All right. Turning this over to Kira, and she is going to be introducing our candidates who are here in the room with us.
So first, we're going to hear from Rachel Howard, who has thrown her hat in the ring for Gary Peters' seat that he will not be running for re-election. Rachel will tell us all about herself. That's kind of her job here. And there's a lot for her to tell. But when I read over her bio, the thing that really caught me was her focus on service. She has been in service to the people in her community. It sounds like all of her adult life. And that's a really beautiful action that not many people take, is to work for others. So we will hear from her about how she was an EMT in Metro Detroit, how she was was a first responder and the most crucial responder there, and how she was a medic in Iraq and Afghanistan, always being of service to the men and women at arms that she was with. So she'll tell us how she wants to see a better world, and we're all for that. So let me introduce Rachel Howard.
And you have to sit, I'm afraid.
Wonderful introduction. Before I sit, I do want to ask Ellie, I believe that you said you might have somewhere to be after this.
We do, but
Okay.
we're on schedule.
I just want to make sure with weather that you guys aren't going to be like butting up against something.
No, we're in the area.
Okay, all right, as long as you're in the area. Thank you. I appreciate being here, truly. My name is Rachel Howard. There's a few faces I recognize from the last time I stopped by, but I know that there's a lot of new faces, including some new members. So I will give you a little bit of the backstory on me, because I do believe that context is incredibly important when we're looking at people that we may want to be voting into office. So I am a native Michigander. I have been here my whole life. I grew up in Macomb County in southeastern Michigan. I got my undergrad at Grand Valley State in Grand Rapids, and I currently live in Washtenaw County outside of Ann Arbor. I am the mom of 4 boys between the ages of almost 3 on the 20th and 18. So we've got it all going on in my house right now. You name the emotion, it's occurring. I have spent my entire life of service. So I graduated in 01 and then went into emergency services working in southeastern Michigan on an ambulance in the Detroit area. I joined the military in 05, primarily because I had been raised in a family where service was far more important than self. Most of them had served in the military. They had always believed that you leave things better than you found them, and you put kind of the people in the mission before your own welfare. So I joined the military in 05 with the express intent on being a medic. That was my bar. You won't take me unless you give me medic. And subsequent to that, I did deploy to Iraq in 08 and Afghanistan in 2012. I had the really fortunate ability to serve in communities overseas that most people don't get to see. I worked in a detention center that was full of detainees, Iraqi detainees. These are individuals who are imprisoned at the moment for some sort of crime, as we deemed it. And it didn't matter, because at the end of the day, I am there to provide a service, and that service is to ensure that you are healthy to the best of my ability. I don't care if you're a service member or a detainee. I went on in Afghanistan to work primarily on the road on convoys. I was unfortunately injured in 2012, but I am one of the about 500 women in the United States history to ever receive a Purple Heart. It's a very educational experience. But I say that in jest, but it's also very true. It gave me the opportunity to see the healthcare industry, not just from a provider standpoint, but also from a patient's. I went through almost a year of recovery here stateside, and experiencing things as a patient is very different than experiencing them as a provider. And there was an insight that that gave me that fortunately at the time allowed me to be a better provider and to truly understand what people were experiencing when going through these situations. I went on after I retired in 2019 now to get my master's in social work with a focus on leadership and systems change, and then on to public health with the focus of global health and change. The intent of all of this was to expand what I had already done and already experienced, was this concept of I can do more. I can change the world around me. I can have a positive impact. And those educations were designed to really focus on how do I change the systems that we are living in to ensure that everybody has the best opportunity to be happy, healthy, and to succeed in life. So I went on to research. I worked at Henry Ford Health in private research and neurosurgery. I worked with brain cancer patients. And then I was fortunate enough to secure a position at Veterans Health Affairs, working in Ann Arbor and creating one of the nation's first deployment-related respiratory disease clinics that served service members that were experiencing undiagnosed respiratory issues, working to validate the experiences that they were going through and provide care that they had not received up until then. I had always said that I would rather eat glass than get involved in politics because it sounded more enjoyable. And I'll be honest, I wasn't wrong. I think it would be. This is not where I saw my future going. This is not what I ever intended on doing. I was so happy where I was, serving the populations that I was serving, creating these programs and creating this change. But it reached a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And the turning point was one day in the middle of Signalgate, when I had been talking, I think, for 2 hours in circles. And my husband looked at me and said, you know, Ray, you can bitch about it or you can do something about it. And I have never been angrier in my life than at that moment, because he was right. I had never been called out so hard, and it was by my own husband, but he was right. I had always said I spent my entire life in service, that I gave my all, but at the end of the day, could I really look in the mirror and say, that's what I was doing? And I couldn't. He was right. So Gary Peters had announced that he was no longer running for re-election. And I very much have appreciated Gary Peters' work over the years. And I said that this is going to seriously hurt Michigan. We need this seat. We cannot afford to lose this seat. We have Alyssa Slotkin, whom I am incredibly grateful for. She won her seat by 0.9%. 0.9. And I looked and said, I can do this. I have 25 years of systems change experience. I was able to work in an environment when I was in the military, stateside, that created the nation's first response force that integrated Department of Defense, FEMA, DOJ, all of your local state as well as community resources to respond to national incidents involving chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, explosive action here in the US. That is a lot of ego. That is a lot of opinion, all in one room. And to be able to bring them all to the table and come to a consensus and agree, that's what I do best at, is bringing people with very different views and opinions and getting them on that same path forward to benefit the communities around me. That is what I intend to do in this role. It is an incredibly divisive time right now. I feel like every day you're told it's us or them, it's right or left, you have to pick. And I can't be a part of that. I believe that I have to be a part of a solution moving forward, that I have to stand by my own values that the party has put forward that truly match mine and work towards all of our best interests. I am willing to work with absolutely anybody who is set on solving the problems that we face. And those problems that I see are the ones that people are struggling with every single day. The things necessary for basic life, housing, food, jobs that actually pay livable wages. Now, when I say I grew up in Michigan, I said I grew up in Michigan my whole life. And the only reason why I am sitting here today with the opportunities that I had was because of the concept of the American dream. You see, my father's family came here from Lithuania in the early 1900s, that at the time was occupied by Russia. They came here and never spoke of their experiences. They refused to. But they came here because they wanted security and safety and opportunity, and they achieved that. My mother's family was from Kentucky in the Appalachian Mountains. My grandfather was a coal miner and a day laborer. He had a wife and a child in a home that had a dirt floor and no interior utilities. He had absolutely no promise of position, but he came to Michigan hearing about the unions and the quality of life that they offered. He became a steelworker, remained that way until the day he died. He was able to watch both of his children graduate with advanced degrees in their chosen profession. And that is what absolutely everybody is entitled to. A dream where they can actually improve and they have the opportunity to achieve the life that they want. And that is my intention. Ensure that my children, that our grandchildren, all have the same opportunity that I was afforded. Now, I know that we need to be mindful of time. We do have Ellie who's waiting on us as well. I am happy if there are a few questions to answer, any brief questions, if we have time before we move on.
Sure. Yes. Wait a minute. You need to, the microphone.
Oh, why do you think it's so divisive right now?
Why do I think it's so divisive right now? This is something that I think if we've been paying attention, we've been watching for decades. We have been watching kind of this increasing finger pointing. Somebody does something wrong and we all respond with this, well, they started it, so I'm gonna almost one up. I watch my, hold my beer, watch this. It's time for accountability. I don't care who started what, it's irrelevant. We're here now. What are we going to do now to ensure that tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now, our country is the place we want? I don't care who started it. Let's end it.
We also have a question on Zoom from Reverend Steve. If you are elected, will you make it one of your top priorities to get cannabis out of the drug schedule completely with capital letters and a lot of exclamation points?
This is one of those, it's like, why I didn't even talk about this. It's cannabis. I don't understand why this is even really a conversation or why it should be controversial in any way. If you want to partake. This is not, it's like alcohol. Treat it like alcohol, period.
Right, any other questions in the room?
Two things that I'm really concerned with about the future, like I said, grandchildren, I have them, bunches of them. Universal health care, I would love to see that. Yeah, more on off the climate wagon. Let's get back to something real that might work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I am very much, when it comes to healthcare is my number one priority. And I've worked in it for 25 years at this point. We've made a lot of mistakes. One of our biggest mistakes, regardless of the topic, is we don't talk to boots on ground. The job of leadership is to go to people who are actually doing these things and saying, what do you need from me to do your job? And we have failed to do that in a number of ways. I do not see a future without some sort of single payer model when it comes to healthcare. We cannot continue on this path. It's not possible. What that specifically looks like, I think, is open to discussion. There are a lot of different models that have a lot of benefits. What the best one is going to be, I can't say. I believe that a bridge to a full single payer model, a good bridge would be a Medicare buy-in. Essentially get rid of the age. Anyone can buy into Medicare. If you run the numbers, I've run a half dozen different models, come out is essentially equivalent to the ACA prices. That I think would be a good bridge to allow us to get a lot of data, show that this is an effective program, gives us time to really revise it to make sure that we can actually provide that amount of care to an increasing population, but also just the proof to say this works and we can scale it to a larger full population without trying to snap our fingers and switch over while having an untried model where people fall through the cracks. So this provides kind of that safety net to ensure that people just don't get lost in a brand new system. I will be here till the end, so if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask at the end.
Great. Well, thank you for sticking around and thank you for coming again. Thank you, Rachel. All right, and here's Kira again to introduce our next speaker. And by the way, we did get, somebody said, thank you for one of the best Zoom experiences on the sound and visual are very good. Appreciate the opportunity. This person is 1,500 miles away. So, good job. And just to let you and the people on Zoom know, and the candidates staff, we've got 32 people on Zoom and about 45 in the room. So you're talking to about 77 people, and great.
All right, we have a far reach, baby. Yes. Well, I'm here again to introduce Eli Savit. It's Eli. Let's all say it. And he's running for Attorney General, given that our beloved Dana Nessel is term limited. But after reading his bio, I think that he's going to work just as hard, if elected, for the people of Michigan. Eli has been a civil rights and public interest attorney. He's litigated on behalf of the ACLU. He's taken on large corporate interests on behalf of people like you and me. So I'm going to let him tell us more about himself, but just between us, I have a feeling he believes in democracy. I'm not shocked him these days.
Good.
It's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you. And what a great turnout both here and online. I have to say, the first thing I always say when I do this little spiel is, it's Eli, not Eli, right? I go through this whole thing and I'd never thought about having everybody say it with me. First, so that might be incorporated into the stump speech from here on out. That's
it's the Benzie way.
It's the Benzie way. I will give credit where credit is due. I'll say we're going to give the Benzie shout out. Look, so yeah, my name is Eli, not Eli Savit. I'm running for Michigan Attorney General in 2026, and there are so many important races on the ballot this year, but I believe that none is more important than state AG. And I'll tell you why. We are seeing this administration, presidential administration, break the law. I would say daily. That would be an understatement. Congress has proved unwilling to stop this president. What we have potentially is recourse to courts. And the state attorney general is the one position that when Donald Trump breaks the law and harms the people of the state of Michigan can go into court and to sue him, and I will do that. But the other thing is this, and I've got to be perfectly blunt, we have a horrible U.S. Supreme Court right now. And we are going to lose some cases that we should win. And already we have seen this Supreme Court allow this administration to cut back on things like civil rights enforcement, environmental protection, worker and consumer protection. And what that means is that our state AG needs to fill the gaps and enforce our state level civil rights and environmental and worker and consumer protection laws. And I will do that as well. But for those of you who may not know about me, you're probably thinking, okay, that's nice, but who are you though? And why do you think you can fill Dana Nessel's very big shoes? Well, if I was standing up, I could show you. I have size 15 feet, so like there's that. But I'll tell you a little bit about my background and why I think I'm well situated for this role at this time. I am born and raised in Ann Arbor, and that's about where I live now. I'm in my second term as the elected Washtenaw County prosecutor. Now, I want to say this. I know being from Ann Arbor, running statewide, can be a little bit controversial. Do we have any Spartans in the room? Few Spartans. Okay.
Well, bye.
For you Spartans, do not worry. Despite me being born in Ann Arbor, you can vote for me anyway. Because I did not, in fact, go to the University of Michigan for undergrad. There you go. Now, I'll tell you the truth. It's not actually because I didn't want to. See, the University of Michigan and we had a philosophical disagreement when I was coming out of high school. I thought I was a college basketball player. University of Michigan said, you're 6'4", you play center and you can't jump. No, you are not. So I went to Kalamazoo College on the west side of the state where I could play college basketball, tiny school, had a great experience and did that. So Hornets? Hornets, yes, I got one. See, sometimes you get one. The mighty Kalamazoo College Hornets. Before I went to law school, actually, my first job was as a public school teacher. I taught 8th grade special education and general education classes. I then did go to the University of Michigan for law school, and I've had a variety of experiences in my legal career that I think set me up well for this job at this moment. One thing that I'm told that I would be the first attorney general in Michigan history to bring this experience into the office is I have been a practicing environmental lawyer and have sued corporate polluters like DuPont and Shell and Exxon and Chemours for PFAS and other contamination. And I've represented states in this work. And not to put too fine of a point on it, I know how to win these cases. Because the case teams that I've been a part of, for PFAS contamination alone, in New Jersey alone, have recovered nearly $3 billion from DuPont and other corporate polluters. I know how to bring these cases. There is nothing more important than protecting our air and water. Michigan has more identified PFAS sites than any state in the country. I will sue corporate polluters, and I know how to win those cases. Other thing, yeah, we can clap for that. Early on in my career, and I'm looking at her right now, but I had the tremendous opportunity to work for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the United States Supreme Court. And hers, of course, is an example that I strive to carry with me always. But after I was done doing that in Washington, D.C., I decided to come home. My heart's always been in Michigan. I came back and I accepted a job as senior legal counsel at the city of Detroit. There, I led our public interest litigation work. What did that mean? Well, for one, it meant suing the opioid industry. And I led the city's efforts against the opioid industry. And we were the first city in the state of Michigan to sue the opioid industry for the damage they had done to our communities in perpetuating the addiction epidemic that still ravages so many communities. You know, I was at a, early on in my campaign, I was at an event like this when I was talking to folks beforehand. Somebody said, you know, I like Dana Nessel because she's a fighter. What story can you tell me about your background that tells me you're a fighter too? So I told this story, and I'll let you guys judge for yourself. I mentioned we were the first city in the state to sue the opioid industry. Industry got word that we were thinking about doing that, and they were not too pleased. So they flew a bunch of corporate lawyers and executives from New York and actually Colorado into the city of Detroit, and we hosted them at Detroit City law offices, and they sat around a conference table from us, and they threatened us. They said, not only is this case meritless and it's going to be dismissed, it is so frivolous that we are going to seek sanctions against any lawyer who signs that complaint. Got up and they left. And I looked across the table at my co-counsel and my outside counsel. I said, well, if we were not suing them before, we sure as hell are now. Because you don't send a bunch of people into Detroit to threaten us if you don't got something to hide. So we sued, and I proudly signed the complaint. And the funny thing is, I still haven't been sanctioned. Because here's a little legal tip. You can't be sanctioned for filing a frivolous lawsuit if you win the lawsuit. And we were, in fact, able to get $50 million and counting into Detroit to remedy the opioid epidemic from these corporations that threatened us. So that's the story I tell. The other thing that I was tremendously proud to work on in the city of Detroit was I led the city's efforts in the right to literacy lawsuit. And I don't know if folks remember this, but this was a lawsuit that challenged the Betsy DeVos-inspired policies that had decimated the Detroit public schools. The one thing that has always stuck out to me about this case, I was a former 8th grade teacher, and there was a school in Detroit where they couldn't attract an 8th grade math teacher, and they couldn't even find. So what did they do? They picked the 8th grader that they thought was the smartest 8th grader, and they said, you are the teacher now. You are now the 8th grade math teacher. And the case that we made was that is a school in name only, that is an education in name only, and the federal Constitution requires more. And we got a good decision out of the United States Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit, and we were able to recover $100 million, which is currently being reinvested in Detroit schools for things like literacy coaches, literacy instructions. And I will always stand for kids and teachers as Attorney General. So I was doing that, and I decided to run for county prosecutor in Washtenaw County, my home county where I was born and raised. Elected in 2020, re-elected in 2024, and I'm proud of the work that we do in the prosecutor's office. Like any prosecutor's office, one would expect, we treat serious crimes seriously. Under my leadership, we started dedicated units focused on domestic violence and sexual assault, because those crimes need to be handled by trauma-informed attorneys that understand the coercive dynamics that go into those cases. We started a cold case sexual assault kit initiative, which investigates and prosecutes unsolved rape cases. And we've got not 1, but 2 serial rapists off the street as a result of that initiative. The other thing that I'm fully cognizant of, though, that not everybody in our justice system needs to go to jail, needs to go to prison, or even needs a criminal record. So frequently, people are coming into our system, they're accused of lower level offenses, and what they need is help. What they need is resources. Maybe it's substance use treatment, maybe it's mental health treatment. We've had people that need grief counseling because they unexpectedly lost a loved one, and that's what's going on in their lives. So we started Michigan's only pre-plea diversion program in the entire state, which for lower level offenses that don't impact public safety, we give people an off-ramp before they even plead guilty to a crime, set them up with an individualized plan. If they do everything right, we'll dismiss the case, having got them back on the right track without ever having forced them to plead guilty to a crime. So the next time they apply for housing, jobs, educational benefits, they don't have to check that box. It says you've been convicted of a criminal record. This program, I didn't even get to the best part yet, because we did an independent study of this program, because I'm a numbers guy, a data guy. I think we should be doing stuff that works. And what it found was that over 90% of the people in this program had completed it successfully. And of those, of the 90% that completed it successfully, not a single one had been rearrested. Wow. Not one. Wow. Which means the recidivism rate, lawyers can't do math often, but like I can do that math, right? 0%. So you can't do much better than that. And anybody who says that we can't keep our communities safe and also promote rehabilitation, I say look at Washtenaw County. Other thing that I started as county prosecutor was I realized that there's a whole category of harm that occurs in our system that frequently goes unaddressed. And that is when corporations and businesses hurt ordinary people. Wage theft, which is bosses stealing from their workers, is the most common form of theft in the United States. In fact, if you added up every other form of theft, every pickpocket, every robbery, every time somebody rifles through your car and steals stuff, the amount that Americans lose due to all that, you add all that up, the amount that Americans lose each year due to wage theft exceeds all of that combined. So I said, we've got to do something about this. And so we started the only economic justice unit, the only one in a prosecutor's office in the entire state of Michigan. And it focuses specifically on worker and consumer protection. And we go after businesses who steal from their workers, and we've gotten money back in workers' pockets. We go after scammers that are targeting our seniors, and we've stopped scams that do target our seniors. And we've gone after slumlords and shady housing operations that are taking advantage of the most vulnerable, low-income residents, folks on housing vouchers. We've got out-of-state slumlords that are maintaining properties in just dilapidated conditions, but advertising it as though they were pristine. We sued them. We won. In fact, we just got a good decision out of the Michigan Court of Appeals yesterday on this. And that, I submit to you, is the work of an attorney general. Is to stand up against powerful interests on behalf of people who may not be able to afford legal representation of their own, who may be in a power dynamic with their boss or with a corporation such that they can't bring a lawsuit. The AG needs to be there to stand up for them. That's the work I've done throughout my career. That's what I'm going to do. She. A couple other things I'll mention about my time as prosecutor. One is I thought that the most challenging season of my time as prosecutor was going to be the summer of 2022, because that, of course, was when Roe versus Wade was overturned and Michigan's archaic criminal abortion law threatened to spring back into effect. And this is particularly important in Washtenaw County as a Washtenaw County prosecutor, because I've got a university community, right? Got the University of Michigan, got Eastern Michigan University. And I was, they're the Eagles now, but yeah. But I was besieged with phone calls from parents of young women. And they were saying, look, I need to know what you are going to do about this criminal abortion law, because if my daughter's bodily autonomy, reproductive freedom, fundamental rights are going to be criminalized, she's not going to school at the University of Michigan. She's going to go to school in California or someplace that actually respects her fundamental rights. Now, the easy thing to do, which I did, and I said this, was not to prosecute under that law. And I would never have prosecuted an abortion case. But I'm not somebody that just likes to sit back and hope for the best, right? I decided to actively litigate, and I personally litigated this case alongside Governor Whitmer to get that 1846 abortion law struck down under the Michigan Constitution, invalidated, preserve abortion rights in Michigan until we, the people, could enact Proposal 3, put reproductive freedom into our Constitution expressly, and I will always fight for reproductive freedom as Attorney General. And I said that I thought that was going to be the most challenging season of my tenure as prosecutor, and then like Donald Trump gets reelected second time, and we know. I mentioned at the outset that a top priority of the next Attorney General needs to be standing up to Donald Trump. And you can know that I will do that because I've already done it. Since literally day one of this administration, when he issued his racist and unconstitutional birthright citizenship order, we at the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office have been in court alongside cities and counties across the nation, pushing back and challenging his unlawful actions that harm our communities. And so we did that for the birthright citizenship case, and we're still doing it for the birthright citizenship case. We've challenged his unlawful federal funding cuts, his unlawful federal firings, his attempts to send the military into the streets of American cities, and his cruel attempt to use SNAP benefits as negotiating leverage in shutdown negotiations, which would have left 1.5 million Michiganders hungry. So I am not somebody who is standing here or sitting here, I guess, before you, simply saying, trust me, make me Attorney General, and I'll start pushing back come January 1st, 2027. We've already been doing it in the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office. It is the morally right thing to do. We cannot appease this administration. We need to stand up for our future, because it is only by standing up now that we can build a future that we can be proud of here in Michigan. That's why I'm running for your Attorney General position, and I hope to earn your support at the April 19th convention. Thank you so much. I see a question back there, and I don't know if we have time. I do want to actually mention just one quick thing. I mentioned the April 19th convention. We select our candidates for Attorney General at a convention in Detroit that's going to be on April 19th. There's no statewide primary. If you are interested in signing up, voting for us at the convention, Adam's got a sign-up sheet that he's going to be passing around. If you are online and want to do that, go to Eli for Michigan, ELIFOR Michigan.com, and you can click the pledge to vote.
No, that's okay. I am going to take the chair's prerogative and ask a question, if I may. I know Michigan has some really strong election protection for us. My concern is, do you have a plan should, after January 1st, you take office, when the election is certified in Washington, that we don't have another fiasco like we had before, and especially with the fake electors that we had in Michigan?
Yeah, and so let me just start by saying a couple things. One is, every single election since 2016, I have worked for, even as an elected official, I've volunteered for the Michigan Democratic Party's voter protection program and been in the boiler room, the statewide boiler room, that coordinating with thousands of volunteers that are doing voter protection work on the ground across Michigan. A couple of things from that experience that I know to be true. Number one, we don't just work on election day. right? We don't start the work on election. There is planning that occurs weeks and months ahead of time, various scenarios, right? You mentioned fake electors, and fake electors are, of course, one such scenario, right? And I think that cases that have been brought, of course, should provide disincentivization, but like we know that that's something that might be coming, right? We also need to be prepared for threats at the polls or attempts to stop voting through litigation filed by bad actors, right, on election day that will predominantly target minority communities. There is a whole panoply of potential threats on election day and in the weeks leading up to election day, since we have early voting now, that we need to be planning for. These are the tables that I've been a part of, both as prosecutor, where we plan for this with our law enforcement partners to protect against threats of intimidation, violence at the polls, and as a voting rights lawyer with the Michigan Democratic Party, that leading up to election day, where we seek to do voter protection on behalf of residents everywhere in Michigan. So yes, planning for 2028, which I know there's going to be shenanigans around, it starts on January 1st, 2027, when I take office. We're going to have a great Democratic Secretary of State, right? We're going to have a great Democratic Attorney General. We're going to have a great Democratic governor, right? And we are going to be at the table, and we're going to be planning, we're going to be ready to address any attempts to steal the election in 2028, because I don't care who wins the election. I mean, I do care who wins the election, right? I care deeply who wins the election, but our job is to make sure that whatever people decide, that the election is free, fair, and final.
Great. Junie, thank you so much for letting me step on your foot.
Thanks for coming today. I have a couple of questions. I have a drug addict in the family, and I have Jewish members in my family. And so recently, the Trump administration has decided that they're going to cut $2 billion for any substance abuse rehab. The other thing that I'm concerned about is in Philadelphia, the Trump administration is asking for the university students' names that are Jewish so that he can help protect them. So I'm really concerned about those two issues.
But I share deeply your concern about both of those issues, and I'll address them in turn. One is, I mentioned the success that we've had in Washtenaw County, getting people help, getting people treatment. Honestly, our job in the justice system is pretty minimal there. We say, here's the path that you need, right? Here's the diagnosis that we have from a medical professional, treatment provider. And they actually do the hard work of getting somebody back on the right track. Our job as prosecutors, judges, law enforcement is simply to, largely give them a kudos, clap, and dismiss the cases when they've done everything right, when they've done that hard work. The slashing of programs for addiction-related services is cruel and inhumane, especially because they did it in the middle of a funding cycle, right? Where some people were already receiving those services. And I've talked to providers that I know, we're scrambling to figure out, what do I do with this patient tomorrow? And by the way, I'll say this too. I am so sick of Republicans claiming that they're tough on crime and then doing crap like this, which is something that cuts at the most effective crime prevention tools that we have, which is getting people on the right track so that crime doesn't happen in the first place. They're going to blame the resulting increase on crime on, woke, Soros, whatever, right? But I can tell you this as a prosecutor, I don't want to prosecute all that much crime. It's true, because I think it's better to prevent it from happening in the first place, because then nobody gets hurt. That's what investment in these programs has done. I can tell you that I'm sure every prosecutor that works with substance providers can tell you that there are people who have had their lives turned around, and we've made our community safer because we fund these programs. The amount that we gain from that investment far exceeds what we're spending. What does that have to do with the Attorney General? Well, I have to give huge credit to Dana Nessel. She's been fighting back against all these unlawful federal funding cuts really since day one of this administration. That's where the state's role, the state agency's role has to be there. And I know Dana Nessel, the latest estimates from her office are that they've recovered $2 billion plus in funding that would otherwise have been cut through this litigation. You can bet that I will be in court to stop any funding cuts for these or similar programs, because I have seen on the ground how well they have worked and how they protect our communities. The second point, I'm Jewish. And there's no question that anti-Semitism is real, right? We are seeing white supremacists that are at the highest reaches of federal government. Anti-Semitism is real, Islamophobia is real, racism is real, transphobia is real. Like this is where we're at in the country right now. But anti-Semitism is very real, and it's a very real concern, and we should be concerned about it. The Trump administration does not, I do not think, legitimately care about anti-Semitism. What they're doing on college campuses is they're using anti-Semitism as a cudgel to wage war on universities. They've cut funding for a number of research universities, saying, well, it's because you are maintaining a hostile educational environment for Jewish students. Now, what the hell does cutting funding do? That means that Jewish professors, by the way, like my dad, right? They might be out their research money. Jewish students may not be able to have the experiences they would have otherwise had on campus, right? You're not helping the Jews by forcing us to register or cutting university funding, right? Or frankly, using anti-Semitism as a cudgel to attack constitutional rights. So one of the things that we have seen this administration do is use the very real prospect of anti-Semitism, the very real threat of anti-Semitism, to attack First Amendment rights to protest, right? Things like Mahmoud Khalil's detention, things like, Rumeysa Ozturk, who's a tough student who wrote an op-ed, which you can agree with the op-ed or you can disagree with the op-ed, but she was taken by masked ICE agents and thrown into an unmarked van and detained because she wrote an op-ed. That's using anti-Semitism to cut to the core of our First Amendment. And what I've said is this: when you start attacking our rights, history shows us it doesn't end well for the Jews. So I will stand up against that both as a lawyer and as a Jewish person, because I do not want any of this happening in our name.
If there, please wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Straubel. I live in Beulah, and I would like to know what your views are and your strategy for the protection of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah. One thing that I have a lot to say about this, but one thing that I did not get to mention about my background is I actually worked in 2017 and 2018 with a group of lawyers to try to get the Michigan Civil Rights Commission to expand our Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. We were ultimately successful, albeit belatedly, because we were up against Bill Schuette at the time in getting the Civil Rights Commission to do that. And then I was proud to lead a group of 7 elected prosecutors in filing a brief at the Michigan Supreme Court to urge them to adopt that. Now, subsequently, we've changed it through legislation, right? We got the trifecta, and this was one of the first things they did as Democrats. So the point of that is we actually have an extremely expansive civil rights law right now at the state level. And when we're seeing at the federal level, the government, I would say, decimating civil rights. The only people whose civil rights this administration at the federal level is interested in protecting is like people that look like me, except they're Christian, right? So that's where the state AG needs to be the backstop to enforce our protections in Elliott Larson that protect against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. And I will rigorously enforce those. I want to say one thing too, though, which is we also cannot acquiesce to this administration's attempt to throw LGBTQ people under the bus. And I'm going to be honest here, particularly here, the rights to marriage equality are probably going to be under attack. Discrimination against gay, lesbian, bisexual people are going to be under attack. But the community that's really in the crosshairs right now is our trans community, right? They're at the right in the targets of Donald Trump, the Republican, and the right-wing media ecosystem. And people say this. Post-2024, there was a debate in the Democratic Party about whether we should continue standing up for our trans community. And it made me sick. Because we're a party full of politicians that show up at pride parades with shirts that say ally. What is the literal definition of an ally? It's somebody who stands up for you when you're under attack. Nobody needs the allies when you're not under attack, right? So you wear that shirt. It is a time to stand up. And we've seen, unfortunately, transgender rights be taken away, even though there's no law. Like I'm speaking about like gender affirming care, right? There's no law against that at the federal or state level, but the Trump administration's bullying has allowed them to cow medical providers into ceasing to provide care. And this is
Michigan medicine.
including Michigan medicine. And I've spoken out against this, right? It's in my backyard. There are families that I've talked to that have just been devastated by that decision. For those who don't know, Michigan medicine ceased to provide gender affirming care because the Trump administration said, we are going to start investigating you for providing gender affirming care. Investigating what? There's no federal law against it. There's no state law against it. It's very clear. But that mere threat of investigation was enough to cause doctors to change their mind. Now, that's bad enough on its own, but it's also extraordinarily troubling because of where it might lead. If a pretextual investigation is enough to allow a university, a medical provider, a doctor to say, I'm not going to provide this care anymore that is perfectly legal, the next thing they're going to do is start an investigation into abortion care, despite it being legal at the state level and legal at the federal level. After that, they'll start doing it. RFK Jr. is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. They'll start doing it into vaccines, experimental cancer treatments, just medical procedures they don't like. There is no stopping this if we don't stand up now, if we don't draw a line in the sand now. I'll close with this, but by saying, you know, one of the things that I've thought a lot about over this past year is that quote that's emblazoned at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. First, they came for the communists. Then they came for the socialists. They came for the trade unionists. They came for the Jews, and at every point I did not speak up. And then when they came for me, there was nobody left to stand up for me. Right now, it's first they came for the trans community. First they came for our immigrants. We damn well need to be standing up right now. Sorry, stage.
Well, thank you. I'm Jim Olson. I've been an environmental lawyer, public interest lawyer before you were born.
Thank you.
Anyway, three questions. First of all, I have a comment. You know, having practiced environmental law and public interest law in my firm for over 50 years.
A little closer.
60 years. And given this man's passion and the experience that he's given, it's not whether you would vote for him, it's whether you'd be making a great mistake not to. And I think that's the message.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you for running. Okay, two issues. Line 5, both the existing risk underneath the straits and the tunnel, which the state, because of Governor Snyder's ability to cut a deal that didn't require the deeds to be authorized under public trust law. This project tunnel is going forward without authorization under public trust law. It's the biggest violation in the state's history of the principle of the public trust doctrine that protects our Great Lakes. Secondly, the risk to the Straits of Mackinac and the several hundred miles from the condition of existing line has been in the courts, as you know. Dana has been at the forefront and has held the line. We now have a threat with Judge Jonker's decision that puts these federal laws ahead of the sovereign rights, property rights, constitutional rights of the sovereign title of the state of Michigan. Below I mean, this is a condition of statehood. And the judge says, hey, that's these federal, somehow we can extinguish the rights you have without, with a judge's discretion. So that's one major issue I'd like you to address. You don't have to take a long time at it. But the second one is the concentrated feed animal operations in the state of Michigan and worldwide, but
Yep.
certainly in Michigan, certainly in the Midwest, Iowa. We have the most extensive damage, E. coli, nitrates, phosphorus,
Yeah.
And we have 1/3 of Lake Erie for the last 15 years that has been dead because of phosphorus. What would you do about that to end that?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I'll take the, first of all, Jim, I think you and I got to get lunch sometime because we would have a lot to talk about, and you know, this man knows his stuff on environmental laws. That yeah. Look, so with the concentrated feed operations, obviously, as you know, that they're regulated as point source discharges under the Clean Water Act. The AG has the authority to file suit under them. I mean, the short answer is like, do everything in my power to protect our Great Lakes, to protect our environment using the hooks that we have. I'm very worried about EPA. I'm not even going to call it being asleep at the wheel because it's intentional, being in the pockets of corporate polluters. It's environmental protection in name only right now. But that means that state AGs really do need to be the backstop, especially with this. With respect to the Line 5 question, I'm just going to say this, actually. I'm 42 years old. So I don't know if you clocked me right. But anytime a 42-year-old says, well, I've been fighting for this issue for 36 years, you should look at them, you should say, you're probably lying because I can do math. That means you were 6 years old. Except I literally have been fighting for the environment since I was 6 years old. And I can prove it because when I was 6 years old, I got Ranger Rick magazine. Y'all remember that? And the Exxon Valdez oil spill had just happened. And I saw pictures of these birds with oil slicks on their feathers. And it made me really sad. So I started a Stop Oil Spills Club for my first grade classmates. We were competing against the No Boys Allowed and No Girls Allowed Club. But this one was co-ed. And we marched around with signs that say Stop Oil Spills. And we wrote letters. And they didn't listen to me then because oil spills kept happening. But now I'm a lawyer and I'm running for Michigan Attorney General. They can listen to me now. And I say that just to, it's a cute story, and I've been blessed to tell cute stories. But also like to give you a sense of where my heart at. That exposed oil pipeline is in the worst place in the entire nation, I think, because one anchor strike, we're polluting 90% of our nation's fresh water supply. Now you mentioned I have a similarly robust view of the public trust doctrine as you do, having litigated on behalf of states in environmental cases. I am deeply concerned by Judge Jonker's decision. For those who may not have been reading the latest out of the Western District of Michigan, basically what Judge Jonker, federal judge, said was the state has no authority whatsoever to regulate the safety of pipelines or even where pipelines go if they have a safety interest in mind. All federal, state is entirely cut out of the process. Now that's a really disturbing decision, not just because of Line 5. First of all, I mean, like if you take that decision to its logical conclusion, it means even the tunnel they don't have to do, right? Because the state just it's entered into under the state's authority. It means that Enbridge can keep things in the status quo, right? With an exposed oil pipeline on the bottom of the Straits of Mackinac. It also means the state can't really do much to even like route pipelines away from a school, right? If you're worried about an explosion, that's the health and safety. It's breathtakingly broad and deeply concerning. Look, however Line 5 ends up in court, I realize it's been bogged down in court, right? But the breadth of that decision can't stand and can't be affirmed at the appellate level. But I'm deeply concerned about it because we got a bad Supreme Court, and this one has cert all over it. So it's something I'm going to be working very, very hard using every legal strategy I have to at least pare back on that decision, which would, again, prevent the state from really doing anything with pipeline safety, which is disturbing to all of us.
All right, well, let's get, I know Ellie's got to go and Rachel's got to go, but it sounds like, if they come back again, we still have a lot of questions to ask. I know someone had a comment about ICE being at Munson. There's still some question about cannabis. So, we still have a lot of issues here. So both of you are welcome back anytime. Jay, of course, you're always welcome back too if you're in the area. If people have a question, Ellie, that they didn't get to ask you, should they just go to ellieformichigan.com or?
Yeah, I mean, so Adam, okay.
Okay.
Adam runs my life. So if you're in the room and you got a question for me, we'll stick around. And if not, yep, you can go to ellieformichigan.com. And again, click that pledge to vote. Wouldn't have any fun. But also it's just ellieformichigan.com. So that's my personal email. I'll get it. So for folks online, if you have a question, eli@eli4michigan.com. All spelled out. We don't use like the number.
Great.
Okay.
Benzie, thank you again for both of our candidates who are here today in person. And one thing before we go, Ellie mentioned that the convention in Detroit, it's April 19th. You have to be a member of the Michigan Democratic Party 30 days before?
30 days before, yeah.
Okay, and there are ways where you can sign up. You can sign up for free. You can join for free. We are going to be talking later among the board about whether, I know there are certain people, like I certainly am going to be there, but if other people want to go, maybe we rent a bus, maybe we carpool or something, some way that we could have more people from Benzie make their wishes known. So at the convention, it'll be Secretary of State and Attorney General and the university trustees, the governor, and the seat that Rachel's running for, U.S. Senate. That's going to be decided by the primary in August. So those are the decisions that are going to be made. So think about it. Coming up in April. April's going to come awfully, awfully fast. If you're at all interested, let me know. Send a note to our email, and let's see if there's enough interest that we can get a group of people down there. Last time it was me and Paul Marcuson who decided for all of you. So, yes, Mike. Mike Ross gets the last word.
Oh, could you explain a little bit about the voting process at that event? I went one time and I'm not sure if it's the same as it was then. How do we decide how many votes Benzie County gets?
I can try that. So basically speaking, after party registrations are closed, right, they will divide up the votes that each county gets based on the proportionate share of votes for Kamala Harris in the last presidential election, right? The most recent Democratic presidential election. So what that means, look, is that Wayne County, biggest county in the state, Detroit, pretty blue, right? It's going to get the most votes. Let's say 1,000, Wayne County gets 1,000 votes. That means that if 500 people show up from Wayne County, each of them carries 2 votes with them. If 1,000 people show up, each of them carries 1 vote. If 2,000 people shows up, right, each of them carries a half a vote. And this was put in place, I think, to ensure that counties like Benzie, where you got to drive further, right, aren't just swamped by voters from Detroit or, frankly, Ann Arbor, which is 45 minutes away. And I can't just win by bringing all my friends from Ann Arbor, right? Because at some point it's diminishing marginal returns. It's meant to ensure statewide representation. So what that means, by contrast, I don't know what the exact allocation of votes is going to be, but let's say Benzie gets, 50, right? If Benzie gets 50 votes and there's only 2 people from Benzie that come, they are super delegates. They got 25 each, and they're going to be the most popular people at the convention because I'm going to be following them around being like, hey, you're voting for me, right? So really, if you just do decide to make that long drive, and I realize it's a long drive.
It's a schlep.
I know. Look, I got up at 5:30. I know, right?
Right. I got there.
So, but your vote really does count and may carry particular weight, actually, because of how much of a schlep it is. And you know what I say is, look, voting at the convention, especially if you're from a county and you're carrying a lot of votes from a county, it's probably the most amplified your voice is ever going to be in the political process, because you're, basically making a decision for 10 million people as to who the nominee is in the state of Michigan. So really, I encourage you to go, especially if you want to vote for me.
Great. Thank you again. I do have a question for you that somebody wanted to ask. We did have one final question, and, please bear with me, but I think it's important. Elizabeth Shrake wanted to know, what would you do to protect us from ICE? Obviously, we're seeing what's happening elsewhere, and there have been some sightings reported. What are our choices here?
Yeah. So I want to start by level setting here, because I'm somebody that tries not to make promises that I can't keep. And I try to always be forthright and honest about where things stand. The state cannot prevent ICE from operating. Yeah, it's a federal prerogative. The feds have jurisdiction. There's no way that we can just kick ICE. What we do not need to do is cooperate with them, collaborate with them in any way. And there's some things that we can do at the state level, specifically with respect to ICE arrests at courthouses and potentially schools, to make certain places safer for our immigrant neighbors. Now, what can the AG do? Well, one of the things that I do think the Attorney General can do is challenge the way in which ICE is operating in the state. Again, can't kick them out, can't say you can't do immigration enforcement. The way in which they're operating is something that I think can be challenged in court. We are seeing these guys that are dressed like 18th century bank robbers, right? Masked men without markings, right? Pull people into unmarked vans, And I have to say, the killing of Renee Good was tragic. It was also in a lot of ways inevitable because of the way that ICE is operating. Largely untrained, no identification on them, no real mandate other than get as many people deported as possible, terrorizing communities of color, and then also you have a Supreme Court decision which basically allowed racial profiling by ICE to stand. It was only a matter of time before somebody got shot. And I think it's only a matter of time now before an ICE agent gets shot, because truthfully, if you see somebody without any markings and they grab you off the street, you do not assume that they are law enforcement. You're going to assume you're being kidnapped. And it could be somebody that shoots an ICE agent. It could be a good Samaritan with a gun that says, I'm going to stop a human trafficking operation, right? And gets in a shootout. It is dangerous to our communities. So the state AG, I do think, can file litigation challenging the way in which ICE is operating here. Saying this policy in which you're not wearing markings on your uniforms, in which you're masked, it impacts the health and safety and well-being of my state and my community. And it's arbitrary, right? That's the legal hook you need to challenge a government action. I say this policy is arbitrary. The other thing is this, and I'll just close with this. I know we're well over, but I mentioned this Supreme Court decision, which basically allowed racial profiling by ICE to move forward. The ICE policy, and they said we're going to be stopping people on this basis. They are brown-skinned, speak English with an accent, and they are working a low-wage job. Right? Goes up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court lets it stand. Now, why did the Supreme Court let it stand? I don't know, because the Supreme Court is doing all this stuff on what's called the shadow docket, right? Where they don't actually issue opinions and explain their reasoning. So nobody really knows why. But one thing that I do think could be the reason why they let that stand is not necessarily because they've decided that racial profiling is allowable under the US Constitution now, which would be really troubling, but because they may have decided that none of the litigants in the case had standing to challenge that policy. In federal court, you need standing. Which means that you need to be able to show that either you were injured by a policy or you're imminently about to be injured by the policy, right? And there's actually some case law which says it's really hard to challenge a policy around when police can stop somebody, because any individual, even if they fit that description, right? Darker skinned, working a low-wage job, speaking English with an accent, it's hard to prove that they're like actually likely as a person to be stopped, right? So the court may have just let us stand because they might have said like nobody has standing here. Again, I don't know because they don't explain their reasoning anymore. But here's where I think the AG and state AGs across the country can play a huge role here. It may be that no particular members of our community or groups representing members of our community has standing to challenge this kind of stuff. But the state, I think, absolutely does. Because I don't have to prove that it's likely that any particular individual is going to be subject to racial profiling. All I've got to demonstrate is there's this policy that's happening in my state. And that's the power of the AG, the ability to litigate on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan. And that's what we really need to be wielding aggressively right now, to tear back on this very dangerous set of circumstances that we have with the way ICE is operating in our communities.
All right. Now, then, thank you. And thank you that everybody, it's 11:30, people are dropping off of Zoom. We could go on forever, but we're not going to. But again, both of you are welcome back anytime you're in the area. If you need a place to work while you're in the area, or just let us know and thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for being here. All terrific. I love you all. Have a good day, everybody.